Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. It's been a couple of weeks since I last posted a video, and I apologize for the delay, but it's the autumn season here in Japan, and this is one of the most beautiful times of the year to be here. And of course we've been kind of out and about and enjoying the beautiful cool and dry weather and the nice warm sunshine without the frequent rain or high humidity or all the other things which we don't like about the summer here. It's a wonderful autumn here, and I noticed that we're getting a lot of visitors here from other parts of the world right now who are lucky enough to be able to come here and enjoy this time of year. But finally we've kind of gotten our fill with the autumn weather outside, at least for now. So we're finally back home. And I thought today would be a great time to make a new video. And this video is something which a few people have asked for over the past year or so. And it's a video asking me to describe some of the various Leica or Leica camera copies which were produced in Japan over the years. And I just happen to have a rather small assortment of these cameras in front of me, and maybe you're laughing when I say small because this is a lot of cameras here, but compared to how many of these kind of cameras were produced in Japan, this is actually a very small amount. I'm sitting at a rather large table here, but there were so many Leica or Leica copy cameras produced that this table simply wouldn't have room to hold all of the different variations. I just picked the ones which I happen to have on hand, which right now isn't as many as I sometimes have, but hopefully I have enough here to give you a pretty interesting comparison and hopefully some interesting information. So when I talk about the Leica or Leica camera, and I apologize in advance for the way I may pronounce the word Leica or Leica, I always get people commenting about my pronunciation of the word. Sorry about that. I kind of use the, I say it the way I hear it, and maybe I'm not hearing it right all the time. Here in Japan, the pronunciation of words is different than in other places. I've been here for a couple of decades now, so I've kind of absorbed the way they pronounce things here compared to other places. So please be patient if you hear me say it the wrong way, and be thankful that I'm not from Australia and trying to explain the names of things to you. No offense to you Aussies who are out there watching. But all these cameras are based, of course, on the old original Leica design. Like this old Leica one from the 1920s. These cameras were widely produced or mass-produced in Germany, and a lot of them found their way into Japan back in those days. And a lot of the famous photographs from the wartime era were actually taken on these Leica or Leica cameras, and Japan really loved the design. And when they began to re-industrialize after the war, when they were looking for a design to base their cameras upon, of course, this was what they looked at. And it was quite easy for them to do it, because one of the consequences of being on the losing side of the war is you lose all of your patents or patents. And pretty much anyone is allowed to use the design. And of course, as you can tell, Japan was quite free in copying these cameras. And you can't say it was just Japan, because these were copied by other countries as well. They were produced in England, they were produced in America, they were produced in various different places, and that's because the original design was just so good. This old camera here, this is very 1920s technology with a very simple viewfinder, a very simple shutter system, a very simple winding system, and a very simple lens and aperture system. And over the years, of course, this design was improved to include more features, like a built-in integrated viewfinder and rangefinder system, and the addition of slow speeds. And of course, this was improved even further in Japan by the addition of things like self-timers and such like that. But basically, the one thing which all these cameras have in common is the lens mount, which is known as the L39 or M39 mount, a 39mm screw mount system which fitted a large variety of standardized lenses. So I have here Tanaka or Tanakta camera. There's a little we would normally say Tanaka, but instead of putting an A on the end, they put like this kind of Japanese ta symbol, hiragana symbol. And I have a Leotax camera. a Yashica camera, a Minolta camera, and an assortment of Canon cameras here. And I decided that I would show a few of the different of the Canon cameras because these are the last of the copies which were made in Japan. And also they show a little bit of interesting improvements over the original design. But the key thing to this design is the lens mount, which allows you to interchange the lenses between all of these cameras. So I can use this Canon 50mm f1.4 sonar design lens on this old Leotax. I can use this Yashica lens on this Minolta, or I can use this old Leica or Leica lens on any of these cameras, which allows me to use a vintage lens with all the wonderful attributes of a vintage lens on a much more modern camera design. Now, of course, this was the old Leica design or Leica design was quite wonderful. It's a wonderful, smooth operating, easy to shoot camera, and the Japanese did a wonderful job in adapting this design to their own cameras. And you often find that these cameras, run just as smoothly or easily as their copies made, as the originals made in Germany. And some people say that a few of the designs are actually better than what were produced in Germany. And I can't argue that one way or the other because I really love the feel and the operation of the German-made cameras. But one thing which the Japanese cameras have an advantage in is the design of the optics and lenses, which were really wonderful in those days. In the post-war era, America was trying to assist Japan in getting back onto its feet and becoming economically independent and not so dependent on, I would guess, the support of America. And so, particularly in regards to the production of things like cameras and household goods, America was kind enough to donate to Japan a lot of the equipment which they had used for testing things like lenses and machines, things which America developed during the war for things like bomb sights and rifle scopes and things like that. So the formulas for really high quality glass, and also the kind of machines which were used for testing these lenses and making sure that they could be produced accurately. And Japan did a really wonderful job, and some of the lens designs became quite legendary. And a lot of these, the lenses on all these cameras are extremely high quality and are very inexpensive compared to the original German-made lenses. And back in the 1950s, a lot of people said that the Japanese lenses were superior to or performed in a superior manner to the German lenses. I can't say whether that's true or not. The definition of superior is very subjective. It's largely a matter of opinion. For myself, lenses which are less highly regarded, I prefer to lenses which are more highly regarded. For example, I really love the old Sonar, the German one, the 50mm f1.5. And I very much prefer that to the 50mm f2 Summicron lens, despite the fact that the Summicron lens is worth twice as much. I just love the way that the old Sonar works. It just, in my opinion, it takes better photographs. But other people don't share that opinion. They seem to think that the Summicron has more contrast or a different kind of glow or whatever. But the good thing about these cameras is that you can use any of these lenses on any of these cameras. So if you have a particular lens which you really prefer, if you prefer the Summicron lens or you prefer the Sonar lens, you can find a camera body which is suitable to use it. Maybe you don't like the design of these cameras here, you don't like the knob winding system and you want something with a lever winding system. Or maybe you don't like the bottom loading cameras where you have to remove the bottom and you have to trim the film leader, and you want something with a more modern system like this Minolta here, where you can just simply open the film door and put the film in like an ordinary camera. That's the wonderful thing about these designs. And of course, a lot of people prefer the entire, I guess, Leica experience, but without the Leica price or Leica price. And a camera like this Tanaka here, it's a pretty good copy to the point that a lot of the parts on this camera could be interchanged with its German-made cousin. It has the same feel and operation, the same smoothness, the same performance of the lens. but without the same price tag. And also, an interesting thing about these is some of the components on the inside, things like the shutter curtains and such, are often of a superior design or superior materials to the ones used in the German cameras. So these might offer you a little bit of an edge in reliability. And when I come across the old cameras like this one, the first thing I had to do with this one was replace the shutter curtains in it. And in the case of this camera here, of course, I had to replace one of the shutter curtains in this one. That's seldom the case when it comes to the Japanese cameras. In most cases, I usually find that the shutter curtains in these cameras are serviceable, especially when it's the later models like the Canon P or the Canon 7, which feature metal shutter curtains. The issue with the shutter curtains, there are a few different problems which they have, especially the earlier ones with the cloth shutter curtains. For example, on this camera here, if I took off the film door and I put a white card in the back where on the film pressure plate, and I looked through, I could see the white card through the shutter curtain because the shutter curtains were rotten and transparent and the light could get through. Otherwise, the shutter seemed like it was working fine. But if I hadn't checked carefully, I've wasted a lot of film trying to take photographs with this. Cameras like the Minolta here, a lot of the earlier Minoltas, the old Minolta 2s, they featured the same problem as the Leica or Leica cameras, but they also feature a problem where the rubber, which impregnates the cloth or the silk in the shutter curtains, gets hard. And it makes it so that the curtain moves very slowly because it has to bend and unbend as the shutter cycles. And it's something which you can't fix short of replacing the shutter curtains. And then of course, cameras like the Yashica here, by the time that these were made, the Yashica and Nikka cameras, the 1950s, were surprisingly very high quality. And it's very rare that I come across one of these cameras which has any kind of shutter issue. This camera here, looking on the inside, and pretty much any of these old Yashica Y series cameras, if I look inside at the shutter curtains, 9 times out of 10 they're still going to look like they're in really good condition. And if I have an old, say, a Minolta 2 camera, this is a 2B, this is the newer version, but if I get one of the older Minolta cameras, 9 times out of 10 times the shutter curtain is going to, or shutter curtains are going to be no good. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at these cameras. With the cameras like this one here, this Minolta, it's very easy to look at the shutter curtains. This is the 2B, and this is the last of the Minolta's Leica or Leica copy cameras, and these tend to have the best shutter curtains, and it's not often that I find these where the shutter curtains are rotted or full of holes or too stiff for the camera to work. In cameras like the Leotax here, it can be kind of hit and miss, but for the most part, they seldom have issues. And when it comes to cameras like the Canon P or Canon 7, there are never issues with the shutter curtains themselves. They sometimes get dented or wrinkled or whatever from handling or from changing the lenses in a kind of a clumsy way. But they're extremely reliable. And of course that was because these were the last of the versions. These were the most improved and the most refined over the years. The cool thing about these cameras is that there are so many different odds and ends and options and things like that. We have, of course, the original Leica or Leica copy here with a very simple viewfinder system, and when you look through the window here, the viewfinder window, we have a viewfinder window and a rangefinder window. Pretty much what you see is just in the opening through the viewfinder, and it gives you kind of a rough idea of what you're taking a photograph of. Later cameras like the Leotax here featured an improved viewfinder with a bright line system, which gave you a more accurate way to compose and to compose your shot. And we have cameras like this camera L1 here, which featured a dial where you can adjust for the different focal lengths. And what this does is it has kind of a rotary lens system here, which simply changes the lenses to mimic the different focal lengths when you have a lens mounted to the camera. So for example, we have a 35mm and a 50mm one, and then we have one which is a magnified version for a rangefinder, and which you would use if you're using accessory lenses, like the telephoto lenses, like 85mm or longer. And the cool thing about this camera is when you select the RF system, it has this button here on the top, which when you use a Canon viewfinder will automatically adjust the parallax. The viewfinder will move up and down as you are focusing the lenses. It's pretty cool. And of course, if you are using lenses which are longer or wider than the available options, you have to fit an accessory finder like the one fitted for this 28mm lens on this old Canon VT. Cameras like the Canon P here have a simplified system, and you probably can't see it, but there are several frame lines in the viewfinder in the back here, from the 35mm to 135mm, and this allows you to use the different frame lines but without having to turn any dials or make any adjustments. And then of course we have cameras like the Canon 7 here, which is a little bit like the earlier Canon L or V series, but it has, a different system here. Rather than moving a rotating lens to change the focal length to the viewfinder, you just turn this dial here and it simply changes the frame lines on the inside. Kind of similar to the old Leica M series, but those do it automatically. When you put in the lens, a ramp on the lens automatically switches the viewfinder to the correct adjustment for the particular focal length. With this one here, it's not automatic, but it's quite easy to use, and it's very large and bright. So, which of these cameras is best for you? That's completely up to you. Everyone has a different opinion on what is the best camera, and what works well for me is probably not going to work well for you, and vice versa. But on the other hand, some designs are quite universal, and the camera here, which seems to be the most popular recently, is the Canon P. Here in Japan and elsewhere, these have simply gone through the roof in value in recent years, and it's basically due to the very minimalist, clean, and simple design. It has pretty much everything you could ask for in an interchangeable lens rangefinder system. First, the wonderful clean design and the minimal amount of controls on it. A very full range of shutter speeds from 1 second to 1/1000 in a single dial, instead of having to use a set of combined dials for different speeds. The fact that it has an assortment of frame lines for different lenses already built in that you don't have to mess with. And it has a film door on the back, quite easy to use. It's not a bottom loader like a lot of the other L-mount cameras. It's really wonderful. And these, if I have to say what is the best 35mm Leica copy camera which you can get from Japan, the Canon P has to be near the top of the list. However, the Canon P's design is based upon the cameras like this, the L and this V1T here, and basically the shutter mechanism is the same reliable design, but it can be made of metal or cloth depending on which version and which year. For better or worse, these don't have the single dial system for operating the shutter, but in my experience, I very seldom use the slow speeds unless I'm going to use a tripod, and I'm not the kind of person who carries a tripod around with me. So the lower speeds are not so relevant to me. So long as I have a good range of faster speeds, I'm quite happy with that. This camera here, the L1, has a maximum shutter speed of 1/500th of a second. Or excuse me, this particular one has 1/1000th of a second, which gives me plenty of speed if I'm shooting, say, ISO 400 or ASA 400 film. Other cameras like this old Tanaka, the max speed is 1/500th of a second, so it's probably better suited to slower films if you're going to be shooting at wider apertures. Cameras like this Minolta here, this is a really cool one, and if I had to say, to describe one of the best Leica cameras and a fairly close copy, this is probably the one I would choose. This is probably, other than the Canon 7, this is probably the most advanced of the copies which were made in Japan. It features enough the original Leica features, such as the design of the shutter speed dial and the release system for the film winding mechanism, and also the dual dial system for the shutter speeds. But this one adds a self-timer a reliable one compared to the less reliable ones which come on some of the other cameras. And a cool flash sync system here on the back instead of located somewhere else on the body, which you sometimes find on other cameras if they have it at all. We have a couple of them here located on the front here. This is one of the most collectible of the cameras, and of the cameras I have on the table, this is the least common. Minolta didn't make very many of these cameras before they completely ditched the L-mount system and began making more mass-produced cameras, which were less expensive to make and which were more widely marketable, but which didn't feature an interchangeable lens system. The 2B, these are really wonderful cameras, and this is the one which I really like to shoot most. I love the way it fits in the hand. I love the viewfinder system, and I just love the feel of it, which is wonderfully smooth, wonderfully quiet, and I really love the performance of these RAW-core lenses. The standard lens which came on the 2B is usually the Super RAW-core 50mm f1.8. Unfortunately, those are kind of hard to find because they scratch really easily, and it's very hard for me to find examples which aren't scratched up. But fortunately, Minolta produced a lot of their LTM cameras in the 1950s with an assortment of lenses, and I just simply stuck on this 50mm f2.8, which is a really wonderful lens and works quite well on this camera. Other ones, ones which are not well known but which are really worth mentioning are cameras like the Yashica YE here, which features the more modern, of course, film winding lever, but which still has the bottom floating system. A lot of people, of course, prefer to be able to load the film more easily than you do on the earlier Leica or Leica designs. For myself, it doesn't bother me much which design I use. For me, it's quite easy to cut the film and load it on the spool, or to pre-cut it and have a few extra rolls of film in my bag or pocket or whatever. And with a little bit of practice, it doesn't really take much longer to load a bottom loading camera than a rear loading camera. And sometimes I find that I'm more likely to do the job correctly with this camera than some of the more modern cameras. I used to shoot a lot with a Leica M4, and from time to time, at least 1 out of 5 times, I wouldn't quite load the film exactly right, and the teeth on the take-up cog weren't catching on the film, and so I was thinking I was winding the film and taking photographs, but in reality I was just winding the shutter and it wasn't actually taking photographs. That's an issue which I don't have on these, because when I'm using a bottom loading camera I have to be more careful, and when I have to be more careful I usually do the job better without making any mistakes. But this video is becoming a lot longer than I originally intended for it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off right now. A few of these cameras I have listed for sale right now. The Canon 7 is listed in my online stores. The Canon P is listed. The Yashica is listed. This Minolta is listed. These other cameras, I think the Tanaka is listed as well. I haven't gotten the Leotax ready yet, and this Canon here isn't quite ready yet, so I should have those up and running shortly. Holiday season is coming up, and I plan to be listing a larger variety of cameras as the season gets closer. So if you're looking for an interesting gift for a loved one or yourself, please visit one of my stores. I'll post links to my stores in the description below the video. I'll be posting more videos, camera reviews, comparisons, and things like that. And also I am going to be posting a video about some current situations here in Japan, something which a lot of you might find interesting, especially if you're thinking of coming and visiting sometime in the future. So if you want to see those, please subscribe. If you like the video, please click the like button. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.